Okay, welcome back to the second part of the spawning tutorial or spawning video. We left off, we had created a set of spawn points. We had created a custom editor extension for the spawn points and spent a lot of time talking about what's going to happen. So in this video, we're going to start off by creating a script for the NPC manager. This is going to be a single script that will own all the spawned NPC. Okay, I'll bring that up in mono develop and I'll get rid of that. Now let's take a look at what we have here. This does not need to inherit from mono behavior. Okay, it does not be attached to anything in scene, nor will it have the update and start methods that we would expect to have. Okay, so that's our very first thing. I'm going to create this as a singleton pattern. Now, the singleton pattern is a design pattern which ensures that we have at most one of these objects instantiated. And it's kind of a trick to it. How do you prevent somebody from instantiating two objects of a class? Well, how do you instantiate one of them? Call it constructor. Well, what we're going to do is make the constructor private. That will keep people from instantiating it. And so that's kind of a mean thing to do. I want to keep track of the, I want an instance to, I want a reference to this single instance that we create. So I'm going to call it a private, make it static. That's key to this whole thing. Okay. Now, before I get into the constructor itself, let's go work on how we're going to go about instantiating this thing. Okay, we're just going to create another static method now. Now, static methods can be called without having an instance of the object. Okay, they're class methods. They are not attached to any particular object. So we can get to them through the namespace. So we create this public static. If we're going to have a static method that I'm going to be able to call from, even without having an NPC manager existing, it can only access other static variables. So that's why this thing needs, one of the reasons it needs to be static. The other reason is I don't want it to go away. So I'm going to call this, it's going to return an NPC manager reference. We'll call it instance. All right, so what this is saying is, you call this, I'll give you an NPC manager. Well, what we're first going to do is we're going to check to see if instance is null. If it's initialized to null, if it's still null, then this is the first time we called it. And I will, let me put some debug logs in here just to, for now, just to kind of see how things are going to work here. Say we're instancing this thing. And I will say instance equals, and I'll just call new NPC manager. Now, the constructor is private, but we can call a private method from a from an object inside the class, from a method inside the class. So we're not. This is the only place where NPC manager can be constructed, is right here. It can only happen if this check is made. Now, if the check, in any case, when we get to this point, either instance was not null, or it was null and we created it. In either event, I can just return instance because it will be a reference to the single object. So that's it. That's all a singleton is. And it's a pretty nice little method. What it means then is not only can I prevent more than one NPC manager from being created, but that I can get to it at any time without having a reference to it. Because I can just call it through the class method. What I mean by that is I can just say NPC manager dot, and no, it's not done enough. I guess it's not going to let me do that. But I can just say, yeah, it doesn't have it. I'll be able to call NPC manager dot instance, and it will give me my reference. Okay, so let's see what we're going to do now. I want to I want to put a debug statement up here NPC manager created. So we kind of see the order these are called in. How is this going to get created? Who's going to create it? Well, it'll be created the first time anybody references it. Anytime anybody uses the NPC manager. If they don't talk to the NPC manager, then nothing will ever happen. Well, kind of a little bit of a chicken and the egg thing. How do we get this going? That's why the zone manager object that I mentioned was going to be used. Is the zone manager object is going to be attached to an empty game object right here. And I'll call it zone manager for the moment. Okay. And then I will do is I will come down here and I will create another script called zone manager. I guess I can't use autocomplete for this. And I will take and drag this up to zone manager. Okay. Now, doesn't do anything right now, but that's how we're going to do it. This thing will be created. I will kick off some things because I expect the zone manager to be created when the zone is started. So when we first start the game. Now, actually, it's kind of created right now. There should be a zone. There is a zone manager in the game in Inspector. When we start the game, things are going to happen here. The editor's environment is separate from the play environment, which is why you can make changes while your game is running and not have them take effect in the editor. That's because there's a C++ side of Unity and there's a C# side. And the data is serialized and moved back and forth between those two. And what's going to happen here is that we have a zone manager object running in the editor side. When we hit play, it's going to be starting up another one in the C++ side. So we can expect, and when you stop the game, it'll come back to the editor, serialize the stuff back into the editor, and so we'll see another zone manager get created then. That doesn't mean there are three of them. It means there's one created in the editor. It goes away when the game starts and the C++ side takes over, which creates one. And then when you stop, that goes away, and another one's created for the editor again after you're done running. So it's a little weird. I have to say that because when I start looking at the console, and we don't have any of this stuff here, and we might see these print messages. So let's, in fact, I can come back here. Now, zone manager will be command behavior, and I need to debug.log zone manager starting. Okay. And it's going to be starting the NPC manager. Now, it's not going to do it just to start it. It's actually going to want to tell the NPC manager, I'm starting. Basically, it's saying, I'm zone 1 and I'm starting. I'm zone 2, I'm starting. NPC manager is going to need to know to spawn mobs. It's going to need to know to spawn them for a particular set of spawn points. We don't have multiple zones in right now. That part is not in, but I am kind of preparing for it a little bit. Now, I did not see my zone manager kicking off. But we see the zone manager starting, and it says found player. Oh, that's my debug log from the command injector. So let me go take that out real quick. Okay, so that's gone. What are the odds that I just have to remember that? That's really frustrating when you see things like that. Now we can search the project, but I'm glad I found it down in here. So I'm going to clap that back down, back to our scripts, and return to the NPC manager. Now the NPC manager needs to manage a bunch of data. And I'm kind of toying with the idea of how am I struggling with, I guess, the idea of how am I going to present this the best, and how am I going to align the code. I want the, I'll put it up here, I guess. Let's start with a private class. I'll call it NPC type. I can make that a function here. Okay, the class is really going to be a data container. So it's going to have a bunch of variables, and it's going to have a constructor, and that's it. We'll see how that is. Let's see, what do I need for an NPC type? Not an individual NPC. Well, I want a public string name. So that would be something like an orc. Okay, so every instance of this type will have that name attached to it. Now I'm going to create a type ID, although let me talk about, I was going to make it an int, but you know, I will change that. So let me come back to the type ID because I want to create that as an enumerated type. Public float scale. Scale is going to be a float. This is how I made the boss mob bigger than the others. I just had them a scale to a little bit larger, and when it was instantiated, I pumped them up that much. That's kind of important because we can take models and make them small, and we make them big. It's the same prefab, but we're going to shrink the or grow them. Let me also string prefab name. Okay, that is also going to be named orc. I think it is. I called it orc. Now, in my folder over here, you'll see this resources folder. This is the old prefabs folder that you saw before in previous videos. Okay, it's important that resources be used, so I'm going to call it that. Because when it comes time to instantiate these guys, well, I want the prefab name, so I can load it out of here. And now let's create a couple of other things like public int min HP. Well, let me just leave these alone right now. We'll just stay, just keep the ones that we're going to use, and then we'll come back to it in another video. So the public NPC type, and it should have a string name, a string prefab name, and a float scale. Okay, so that is what that's going to look like there. And then I want to say this dot name. I'm going to call it this dot name equals name. This dot scale or prefab name equals prefab name. Now, why am I saying this and name? Aren't these the same? Well, no. Name by itself is the parameter. It's the nearest scope, since we didn't have any type of qualifier to it. Well, these variables hide and shadow the class variables. If I want to get to a class variable, I have to go this dot. So this dot name is this one right here, and name is this thing right here. So this is kind of a pattern that I use. This dot scale equals scale. That way I don't have to come up with funny variable names over here. It's really clear which one's which. Okay. Now I'm going to add more parameters to this later, but for right now that's going to be enough. Now, the reason I have a constructor here, you'll see later, it lets me kind of streamline the process of building the table of data, because I can just make a constructor call. All right, so how am I going to handle the NPCs? Now, I was going to talk about type here, so let's work on how to enumerate type. And I will do that, I guess, down here a ways, not up here. Now, why am I splitting it off? Because I want the type enumeration to be close to where the table is being defined. So public enum, NPC enum. I'm making it all uppercase. This is a convention, but it's like a constant. And I'll call it NPC orc. NPC elemental orc. NPC boss orc. Some descriptive thing. This will be a lot better than giving it type numbers, type 1, type 2, type 3. Because we can print them out and they will appear. Okay, so this is going to be up here as well. So public NPC, now I have an enum, and I can say type ID. And I can go and change the constructor so that it's a NPC. Oh, yeah, I have to actually qualify it with the name of the class. NPC manager dot NPC num type ID. Okay. This dot type ID equals type ID. All right. So what this means is I can give them a unique identifier to identify the class. What I don't like doing are seeing things like string comparisons, such as the tagging system that Unity uses. That's really, really inefficient. A type ID can be done in one machine instruction, and it works just as well. All right. Now, what to do next? I think the next thing I want to do is I want to create some type information. Well, let's back up for a second here and discuss how we're going to represent that data. And I think I might have discussed it in the last video a bit. Now, storing information on the NPCs or spawn entries or any of the static data in the inspector doesn't make a whole lot of sense. We could do it, but it'd be easier to use it in code because I can use this editor that I'm comfortable with, and I have a whole lot of screen space, and that'll be nice to do rather than trying to work in the inspector. It's important, though, to remember we have two types of data, and I didn't really see that right away when I was working on this. So that was the key insight. That we have two types of data. The type of data, like the spawn points, that's best to enter in the scene where we can walk around and place things. And then there's static data that's best to enter in an editor. Okay. So an editor is better at searching and that type of stuff. Now, as I said, we could put it in a database, but that's going to be overkill for this. So how are we going to store it? Well, we can recognize that for our spawn entries or NPC types, they need to be a collection of things. Now, the NPC type, I want to be able to quickly locate information on the type by this ID. So I want to look it up by that. So what I'd like to have is sort of like, imagine an array where we index it by this, but also one that grows to whatever size I want, so I don't have to pre-allocate it. And so that describes what's called a dictionary. That's going to describe a dictionary, and it's an awful lot like a map in C++. And I think they're called, I think they may be called maps in Java too. Yeah, they are. What these are they're associative arrays. They're arrays that let us use one object to look up another. And they can be anything. It could be an integer, it could be a reference to something else. So I'm going to use this enumerated type as my key, if you will. This is going to be what I'm going to use to look it up and to store it and then to look it up later. The nice thing about them is that dictionaries are fast. They are implemented, well actually I can't say what they're implemented in inside Unity or inside C#. Inside C++, the SDL maps are implemented using a data structure called the red-black tree, which is very, very efficient for fast lookups and fast insertions. So it's tempting to just use them all over the place. In this case, it makes a lot of sense to put them in here. So I have to think, where am I going to put my dictionary? I'll put it up here. Okay, so private, I want it to be static so that we can add things to it. And I want to index it by this NPC enum. So this is a typed dictionary as opposed to untyped one. And NPC, I don't know what I'm going to call this thing. I need some data structure to describe what the NPC looks like. Oh, I already have, I have NPC type. Just did. Okay, so this is a mapping now between NPC enum and NPC type. So that's why Java and C++ both call them maps. But here they're a dictionary. They're looked up by this key here, the NPC enum, and we get back an NPC type. And I will call this thing, NPC types, and I'll set to null. And I'll come back down to my constructor, and it's very important, just like with Java, to initialize this. Now, why am I checking if it's null? I'm checking if it's null because there was a case, I don't think it's here anymore, but at one point during development, it was being called more than one time. The singleton property was being bypassed by Unity, and so it was initializing it. I don't think that's going to happen anymore, so I'll get this out. That was some bizarre thing that we shouldn't see. NPC type, NPC types equals new dictionary, and this was an NPC enum, and that was a looking at for an NPC type. Okay, it's a new dictionary, and I just call it dictionary constructor. Okay, so that built me one. Now I can do is I can go ahead and load it up. Rather than doing it right here, I'm going to create a function to do it down below. I'll call it load NPC types. Because I'm going to be loading other stuff later, and I can just kind of do it all, make it private. Let's see if that's a void here. Yeah, private void. This doesn't need to load NPC types. Okay, what does the NPC type look like? First of all, they're stored in this dictionary, NPC types, and we can index it by the enumeration, which is right above me. So let's start with NPC orc. And I say NPC orc. Now, you see how it completed it. It has prefixed it with the NPC enum, just in case there's another NPC orc out there, I guess. But that's how we do things. So, and I want to assign it to, I want to assign to it the new NPC type. So I'll call it constructor type. And now, how do I do this? I just like positional calls when there are a lot of parameters. That's one of my big objections with Windows in its early days. That you'd have these functions with like 40 parameters, and if you missed one or got them in the wrong order or something, everything would break. It's a horrible interface. One of the nice things that C++ did, though, is free us from that, because I can say, I want to set the name to an orc. Look, you go away. So let's see what's going on here. Let's see, I want a type ID, ID to be NPC orc. And I want scale to be 1, I'll call 1.0f. And is that it? Okay, oh, the prefab name. See, I forgot the prefab name. Prefab name is going to be orc. They're in the wrong order. This one's out of order. That's okay. It won't matter. It will do the right thing. So that's the beautiful thing about this type of a call. It frees us from making those mistakes. So I'm going to do the same type of thing here on the other two. Copy that, paste 2 more, and now I'm going to, this will be the elemental orc. And I'll leave everything else this the same. And this is going to be the boss orc. Oh, not the elemental orc again. Lost. Right there. Okay, and then I make him 1.5, I think I call. The same prefab, just a different scale. And later on, we'll have different attributes of it. We just fill it right in here in this table. One place. If we want to give it more hit points or better armor, we can do that right in here. And I think that'll work for right now. That'll scale pretty well. Okay, so that will load the NPC types. And I think before I'll do too much more, what I want to do is to run this. And let me just put some code down here to dump this information out. Each NPC type T in NPC types. Okay, this will iterate over all of the NPC types. And I want to debug.log loaded plus the t dot name. So that will show up in the console if everything works okay. So let's start this up, and we get some complaints here. Key value pair, NPC. Oh, dictionaries don't iterate that way. When I said about values, this iterates over just values. The dictionaries are stored in key value pairs. There's a key and there's a value, and it's a tuple. So it's a two-part thing. We'll have the type enumeration, and then we'll have the string. I mean the values, this whole thing. If we just say I'm going to iterate over the values, that will work a lot better. Okay. All right. Let's come back out, and is it zone manager starting? Oh, because we're never calling the NPC manager. We'll have to fix that. What I would like to do here is let me do the dummy function here just to get things going. It's actually something useful here, but public void start zone. It should be called whenever the zone starts up. And I'm going to pass in the zone manager and int ID, some identification for the zone itself. Now, we're not using that right now, but log starting zone plus ID. Okay, so I'll be starting zone 1, for example. I'm going to pass in. And I'll want to, what I should do is I should want to save that off here. So I'm going to say, I don't have to make it static because I don't think I'm in danger of accessing this before it's been created. Private zone manager, zone manager. Yeah, that's going to be created by null anyway, but let's just be nice about it. Okay, zone manager equals zone, and I want to load the information here. So let's think about how this is going to call. This is going to get called from the zone manager when it starts up, and I'm going to cache the NPC manager. Actually, I probably don't need to. I'll not cache it until I really need to. NPC manager dot here. The only thing I can use is instance, but I can do that from the class without having one, and it'll give me back a reference there. And then I can call it start zone, and I'll pass it in this zone manager, and then I'm going to pass it in some zone ID. It's hard coded right now, but I'm not really using it yet. The whole point of that is just to kind of see how things get kicked off. So I think it's probably okay. And we see zone manager started, NPC manager was instance, NPC manager was created, orc, elemental orc, boss orc, and then it said starting zone 1. So that's our startup. Okay, I'm really very happy with that. And I'm going to get rid of this code down here. I know I went to a lot of trouble to type it in, but just because I don't like typing in lots of code and just trusting that it's going to work. Okay, we call it Big Bang integration, where we just do everything at once. I like doing little bits and pieces. Now we have some reasonable confidence that this data structure is being created, and then we can walk through it. So, so that's a good thing. We're having our NPC typed. Next, let's work on spawn points. Come to think of it, though, spawn points are going to need to have spawn groups before they're going to be usable. We could create the spawn entries, though. The spawn entries, we should first of all define what that data structure looks like. And I'm putting them all in here for right now, and I'll break them out later. But you know, shoving everything in one place is kind of bad style. It is bad style, but it's okay when we're kind of prototyping things. So I want public class spawn entry. Remember, a spawn entry is a mapping between an NPC type and a chance and a spawn group. So that will be clear here. One second here. First of all, the NPC type is going to be type ID, really. Public NPC enum type ID. Okay, so that's going to be the orc for the big orc. There's going to be a chance. I'll use this integer because I think it's easier for us to work with. If we take our usual 100 and divide it up into chunks, I'm going to do 80 for the small orcs, 15 for the elemental orcs, and 5 for the boss orcs. Okay, those are all integer values, and that works just fine. So no need to go with floating point numbers. Okay, in fact, the system I'm going to do should work fine for any sum. It doesn't have to sum to 100. It really should for our sanity, but not to just to make the code work. And the other thing we could do is put in a limit, but I'll worry about the limits later. So public spawn entry, NPC type ID, or NPC type ID, and int chance. And this same type of thing as we were doing before, NPC, not types. Okay. This is why I like to let it autocomplete, because it makes fewer mistakes. It's got chance equals chance. For now. Well, we're going to come back and add in some limiting. Because, you know, how many of this type should we put in? Oh, I'll put it in anyway. This is the maximum number we can have spawn. In our case, the boss mob is going to have now, the way I've been calling this stuff, it doesn't really matter what the order is, because I'm calling it by name. That's a nice thing, so I'll keep doing that. But the boss mob is going to have a limit of 1, and so we'll check that when it comes time to spawn to make sure that we don't already have one up. I'd love to test the spawn entries, but there isn't much I can do right now because I need spawn groups. So rather than trying to just create a bunch of spawn entries that go nowhere, let's work on the spawn group just a bit. So we'll need to come down here, go back into my spawns folder, spawns, and I'll create a script for spawn group. So spawn group is a collection of spawn entries and spawn points. It collects all those together. And let's bring it up inside MonoDevelop. I have to go chase down where the window is, down at the bottom of my screen. And I do not want this to be a mono behavior. It doesn't need to be. I'll leave that stuff up there. I don't think I'm going to need it either. But let's not take it out just yet until I know for sure. Let's see. Now, what's the spawn group going to have? I'm going to give it a name for debugging purposes. So it would be like be like the Orc 1 camp, Orc 2. So I'm giving it a name so I know which spawn group it's going to be. I'm going to give it each spawn group will get a spawn group ID. I'm not going to create any enumeration from them because they're just going to be integers. There's nothing to separate one from another. Like, I mean, I guess I could give them enumerations for the camp name, but there's no need to do that. Public int limit max number of mobs spawned. Okay, so in this case, most of our camps had 3 mobs. That was the limit. All right, how am I going to store the rest of the stuff? Time to go back to data structures and think about it again. I'm going to have a bunch of spawn entries. And the spawn entries indicate the mapping between the group and the spawn type. There's no reason why this can't be a list, I don't think. I think that would be perfectly fine to make that as a list, because we're going to be walking the list when it comes time to spawn. I'll give you an example. All right, so we have 100% total probability for the, and we probably should actually store that up here in the no, there's no reason it needs to be out of here. I have not really given much thought to all the access permissions here. We'll have to worry about that later. Okay, it's going to be 100% total probability. We'll calculate that by walking the list of entries and adding their chances together. And then we'll come up with a number. It'll probably be 100 for us. But if it's not, it'll be the number. Now, when it comes time to spawn them up, we will take and generate a random number between 0 and this value. And that will tell us where in the space we're going to be spawning. What we need to do is then walk through the list of spawn entries and find the one that has the range of chances that covers that value. So let's, we'll have to see in order first. But let's say that we do the regular orcs first. That's 80%. Then the elementals next. That goes from 80 to 95%. And then the boss goes from 95 to 100%. If we generate a number like 30, well, the first regular orc covers from 0 to 80. So clearly it's going to be a regular orc. And we can just stop right there. Now, why am I making this a list? It's an order n object. Couldn't we make it better? Well, lists are really great for walking from the beginning to the end from that type of iteration. They're as fast as they can really be. It's not going to be order n because I'm okay. I am visiting every one of them, but getting the next elements is going to be a constant time. Next, observation from within EverQuest, but the number of spawn entries is usually pretty small. Okay, 4 or 5. It's I can't say that for certain. I haven't gone out to check, but I can't remember seeing too many spawn groups that had a wide variety of creatures. Usually they're a very tightly knit group. Okay, you might have some foot soldiers, some bigger guards, and some other bigger guys. There'll be an assortment of 4 or 5 different types of creatures that are going to be spawning in this group. So we can walk that list just fine. It's not going to hurt us. So let's talk about those. I'm going to put this up here. And I'll make it a private list. And list be typed. So now I have to say NPC manager dot spawn entry. So that's why I made that public, so we could see that class. Okay, so this is now a list of spawn entries. How we get them in, we will work on that a little bit later. Okay, so let's go talk about the constructor for this. Public spawn group. I'm going to pass in a group ID, a string, a name, and a limit. Those are the three key values that we need. This.group ID equals group ID. This.name equals name. This.limit equals limit. Okay, so that much makes sense. Next is total probability. Start off at 0. As we process new spawn entries, as they're handed to us, they'll be handed to us one at a time. We'll just add the chance to it. So it really is no extra work on our part to calculate total probabilities. But I do need to create the list. So spawn entries equals new list VC manager dot spawn entry. Okay. Let's make sure we create that list there. The spawn group is also going to have spawn points. Now, we haven't defined spawn point yet. Have we? Yes, we did. We did define a spawn point. The spawn point was that thing that we attached to the game object. Well, we're going to want those because they have the transforms that we want. So let's go ahead and declare a container for those. How are those going to look? I'm going to make those in the list as well. Why do we do that? We can access lists like an array with an index. And the list has a length. Let's say there's 5 in it, like 5 spawn points. Well, we can do we can get that length out of it, and we can generate a random number between 1 and 5, or 0 and 5, and that's our index, so the spawn point we're going to use. So it's a very quick lookup scheme. It'll be great. The lists are great for inserting at the end, inserting at the beginning. They're bad about the middle. We don't want to insert in the middle too much, which we're not going to do. And they're great for lookups. Okay, they aggregate out to almost constant time. So I'm happy to use them. They're almost as good as dictionaries. Look for this, proper. And I'll call it the spawn point. Yep, we know what spawn points are. Oops, what am I doing? I need to create that list down here too. Spawn point equals new list spawn point. Okay, so now we have an empty list of spawn points. I'm thinking about what else we're going to need, but for right now that should be enough. So the spawn group has containers for this. We just need to get stuff in there. Well, the good news is that the spawn group doesn't need to go track that stuff down. Someone's going to hand it to it. So let's just put in, let me get rid of this, the access methods for it. And public void add spawn entry. And that will be an VC manager dot spawn entry. And how do I put it in a list? Well, I just have to say spawn entries dot entries dot add. It takes me longer to do the autocomplete. That inserts it into the list. Great. But one more thing I need to do here. Total prob dot plus equals entry dot chance. That's how I'm going to calculate the total prob. It's no extra work to calculate that. And as we keep adding more spawn entries, we will accumulate that probability, and we'll have the value we need when we're done. I'll also add in a similar accessor, void add spawn point, not spawn point, and spawn points dot add point. Okay, I think we're done with the spawn groups for right now. We still have more to do. Let's go back over to the spawn manager. The reason I went and did that was I wanted to mess with spawn entries. We had created the data structure, but we haven't loaded any in, and because we didn't have the spawn groups. So now we're ready to do that. Let's create a function to load them. And I'll call it out of the constructor up here. So when NPC types is finished constructing here, I want to, I didn't create the dictionary for this, did I? Not good idea. So NPC types equals new dictionary. Oh, nice, it filled it in for me. People hate mono-develop, but I kind of like it. All right, so that takes care of that. Do I have any other containers that I need to initialize right now? No, not yet. I will later on. I'm going to create load spawn entries. Why am I doing that? Because the spawn entries need to be there before we can do the rest of the stuff that the NPC manager needs. I'll come down here right underneath NPC types, private void, load spawn entries. The same type of thing that we do over here. That I want to create a spawn entry and I want to add it, but there's something else going on here. I need to go and look up the group, the spawn group this is going to belong to, and I want to stuff it in there. And that's going to require some checking because I have to make sure the spawn group exists. Now I could get the spawn group right here and do all that checking here, but let me just add another function down here just to be doing. And I want to add in a spawn entry for group ID into spawn group number n, like 1 or 2. So it's just a little helper function to add things in. And what it will have to do is to first of all find a spawn group that we will do. How do we look up a spawn group? Well, spawn groups are, well, we don't have a list of them. Let's go and make that. I expect the spawn groups to be indexed by integers. So they could make it an array, but I don't know how big to make the array. And I could make it a list, but to tell you the truth, the dictionaries are just as fast. And who knows when I might want to change that key type someday. So I'm going to make it a private static dictionary. And I want to map an int to spawn group. Okay, so that's my list of spawn groups. And I'll come down here and say spawn groups equals new dictionary. I suppose you're going to autocomplete for me this time. Int and spawn group. Yeah, now the groups are created, or rather the container for them. All right, now that we have this that container created, what I'm going to do is I want to look it up to spawn group. That's going to be hard because I don't have anything in there yet, but we're getting a little ahead of ourselves. If I can say, go in spawn groups, look this up. I don't want to just index it. I could treat it like an array, like I did here for NPC types. So if I index it and it's not there, it's going to throw an exception, and I don't want that. Instead, I'm going to use this thing called try get value, and I can say, look up the group ID. Come on. Look up the group ID, and I want you to store the result in group. So we have to say out group, because I'm saying the try get value is going to store its answer here in group. Why did they do that way? I'm not sure. It's nice to do this type of a technique if you're going to have more than one value returned from your function. But otherwise, you could have just returned it like you stored it. All right. If group equals null, I'm checking to see that if it's there. I debug.log missing spawn group ID. Send out a message and return. Okay, we're not going to do any type of insertion there. And if we found it, the group should now have a value in it, a reference to the actual spawn group. And I have my add spawn entry here. Okay, that will will now add the spawn entry into the group. I just need some way to getting that group created. And so what I will do up here in load spawn entries is I will start off with spawn groups add. Spawn group 1 will be new spawn group ID 1. Notice I'm using this named parameters now. Name orc1 limit 3. I find that very easy to read. And I missed a parenthesis though, but I do still find it easy to read. Which is why I wanted to do this type of stuff in the editor and not in the inspector. Okay, let's change this. Orc 1, Orc 2. So this is going to create the 2 spawn groups. And so there will be, I'm doing that before I add the entries in. Now I just need to make the add entry calls. Entry, and it's going to go into spawn group, and then it wants a spawn entry. So call constructor for that. What's the spawn entries constructor? Let's go and see if we can find it up here. It takes a type ID, a chance, and a limit. Got it. All right, so NPC type ID is going to be, the first entry is going to be for orc, the regular orc. And chance is going to be 80. And limit, I'm saying 0. A 0 limit in this sense means no limit. And I'm not going to restrict it. I'll have to put that remember that. I'll put the logic in to enforce the limit. Now I have 3 types of orcs here. All go into spawn group 1, and our enumeration here is going to be different. Got the elemental orc will go next. It has a chance of 15. And then the boss orc will go here. It has a chance of 5, but it has a limit of 1. There. So that's those 2. Next is going to be the spawn group 2. Spawn group 2 is like spawn group 1, except that it doesn't have a boss. I know, why go there if you don't have a boss? I'm not sure. This difference here is that I'll put that probability down into the regular orcs. Okay, so orc 2, and this needs to go into 2. Okay, so that should create the spawn entries. Now, how am I going to test this? I don't think there really is a good way of testing this right now until we actually start doing the spawning. I hate to say that, but we put in a bunch of code here, and there's no testing it, but the only thing I can do is read out those data structures are just stored, and just inspecting the code tells me that everything looks good. So I think that the benefit of this type of code is it makes it easy to see what's going on. Let's think about spawn points now. Before we can be spawning anything, we need to have our spawn points. Now remember, I created those scripts, and I attached them each spawn point. And that was intended to help us to look them up. So let's go do that. And that would be done in the Zone Manager. Remember, the Zone Manager has all things Unity. Update. We're not going to have an update in our Zone Manager. We're not going to be doing anything once per frame. I want to call this load spawn points down here. And public void points. Now, I'm not entirely happy with the way I've decided to do this, but I don't feel like changing it right now. See, the thing is, how does the Zone Manager know when to load the spawn points? You can't really load it before the groups are created, and can I really guarantee that over here on the groups that that it's going to be ready for me to create those spawn entries. I think the problem was that when the zone starts up, I want the NPC manager to spawn the initial set of mobs. And if the spawn entries, if the spawn points aren't loaded, it won't be able to do that. So I can't have the zone manager call this. But the zone manager is the one who has to do it. So I'm going to have the NPC manager go back to the zone manager and tell it to load the spawn points. And apologize if that sounds convoluted. It kind of is, but it's really, I think, the best way. If you have a better idea, let me know. But for right now, load spawn points. This is going to look spawn point. We're going to get an array of spawn points. It'll look a lot like what we were doing with the over in the other, in the NPC manager. I want to find all of the spawn points in the scene. This is the time where we use game object capital G. And it's going to have find. I want find objects of type. Object plural. Note the singular, the plural. All right. And I say spawn point. Well, okay, that looks pretty good. Go find all the spawn points. And this searches the whole scene and gets them all. Not something we want to do every frame, but we're only doing it once. And now I want to come down here and say for each spawn point in spawn points. Let's type the iteration. And now I want to say, I want to say add spawn point. Oh, I want to say NPC manager though. NPC manager, now I have to call instance. The only thing I can call here to get an instance. Now I can say, instance. Why am I not seeing add spawn points? Well, let's go back over here and see, did I create this thing? Oh, I did not. So let's go into do a little ahead of myself here. Public void, add spawn point. I'm going to change this a little bit later, but for right now, every spawn point is associated with one group, one spawn group. And I'll get the spawn point passed into me. And I said that this doesn't deal with Unity stuff, but we are going to be holding some things like some Unity data structures that we're not going to do anything with. But the spawn point is a mono behavior, and we'll be holding possibly other things there. I want the transforms out of here because we're going to hand it back to the zone manager later on. So what do we do here? First of all, I want to find the spawn group that it belongs in. Okay. Now, let's look up the spawn group here, the same way we did earlier. Spawn groups try get value. Look it up by group ID. Now, same line of code. Hopefully we found it. If group is not equal to null, this time we're checking to see if it's not equal, so I want to do something in here. I want to say group dot add spawn point. Now, how do I know whether the spawn point was able to be added or not? I think I may need to know that to prevent myself from using this spawn point later on. So I'm going to turn this into a bool, to a boolean, and I want to return true here. Otherwise, I'll return false. And I normally do put this inside of an else bracket, but the only way we get down here is an else. So I'll not complicate things there. There's our spawn point being added. So back over here, we're adding all the spawn points in. Now add spawn point. Why do I have this add spawn point? Because we've extracted the spawn point information, or we can, from the structure. Okay, we have point dot, well, it should know its spawn group. And point. Now, what happens if it's not there? At least log it. Valid spawn group plus point.spawn group plus in scene object plus point.name is the name of the spawn group. It's that SP back over here. Point.name is this thing, Pork1 SP1. So the nice thing about doing that is this: if there's something wrong with this, and there was when I first was testing this on my own, I had forgotten to set the spawn group for one of those guys, and it came up with 0. Well, there wasn't a spawn group 0, and it told me immediately invalid spawn group 0 in scene object Pork1 SP4. And I go, oh, click on that, set the spawn group, and I'm done. It told me right where to go. Else. So the only point with that was giving me the error message. Debug.log loaded spawn point plus point.name plus to spawn group point.spawn group. We can make use of that name again just to print all that stuff out. So where do the spawn points get added? Well, not from the zone manager. Unfortunately, it doesn't know when to do that. The NPC manager is the one that does. Up here in this constructor, let's see where I've got myself turned around here. We're not in this constructor, in start zone. And we want to make sure that the zone manager is ready to get this started. Now we have the zone finally. And I can say load spawn points, and it will go and load them. We're going to respawn them right down here, respawn the zone right after this line. So that's why we have to have a load spawn point sandwiched in between these pieces. Let's see if this actually runs and does something. I'm not sure if there's enough there yet. Wise. Cannot access a non-static member via NPC type. It's NPC Manager 32. Okay, what are we doing right? Load spawn entries. All right. And I see this is all in the wrong spot. Not sure why I did this. This actually belonged in the NPC Manager constructor. Sorry about that. I got myself turned around here. Okay. The NPC Manager constructor does that. And I had it up in NPC type constructor, which didn't make any sense. How about that? Okay. Okay, so game started, zone manager started, instance, NPC manager created, starting zone 1. Now we're loading the spawn points up, and we can see all of them going there. So great, all those static data objects are being created. And this video is getting long, but we're almost there. The next thing I want to do is I want to, let's see if we're ready to start spawning things. The NPC manager, in order for it to spawn things, it doesn't have the right information. It needs to delegate that down to the spawn group. The spawn group is the one who knows what the probabilities are and can roll the dice. Okay, so what I expect to have in here is a function that can. I'll need a way to get a spawn point, but first of all, the public void called respawn. I want to know how many spawn things there are. We haven't really saved that off anywhere. I talked about keeping a list of of things that were currently spawned. So let's go ahead and put that up and create that. Now we do that up here. Private list spawn point. No, not spawn point. List of what? Okay, this opens up a question here. It's going to be a list of NPCs, but we haven't created an NPC yet. So let's back up one bit and go create our NPC class real quick. Fortunately, it's real short. So NPC class will be up here in scripts, and I'll create a C# folder called NPC. We'll click on that. Go in and click it. This is not going to be a mono behavior, and it's not going to have any of this stuff. I want to know what type you are. That would be a good thing to know. Are you a big orc or small orc or a spider or something? I would like to know what spawn point, and I think we talked about that earlier, just in case we have to send it back to its spawn point. And I want to keep track of the game object because I want the transform, really. But I might need other I might need other things for it. I think that somebody else is going to need, I think that the zone manager is going to need that game object at some point. Let's find out. If we want to despawn the zone, we need to have all the game objects. That's right. So if I want to despawn it, I need those. The NPC manager has all the information on what spawn groups are, and it can go iterate through all the ones that are currently spawned, but it won't be able to despawn anything until it gets game object. So we're going to save that. NPC constructor NPC manager.npc enum. It's okay for something that's not mono behavior to have these functions. I'm not going to do a whole lot with them. I mean, to have these objects like game object. This.type ID equals type ID. This.game object equals game object. This.spawn point equals spawn point. Okay, that's enough of that. And I just need a couple of accessors for right now. I need public spawn point. Why are we going to need this spawn point? Second, and I'll talk about that. Once again, this has to do with despawning things. If I want to get rid of all of the NPCs in the zone or all of them in a spawn group, I'm going to need to destroy the game objects, but I'm also going to need to go and set their spawn point in use flag back to default. So let's make sure that we can get those data structures back to spawn. And so it's going to need both of these. Now the NPC class can have a lot more on it later. This is just the bare minimum that needs to handle spawning. Okay, there's no real interesting attributes of the NPC here. Now this is just bare minimum that needs to respawn. Now let's go back to the spawn group now. I was about to do respawn down here, and I was thinking to myself, how do we have a list of things that are currently spawned? Well, what is that list going to be? Well, it's going to be a list of NPC objects. That's what I really want. Private list NPC. Okay, I want to be able to walk through those NPCs and get their information. And it wouldn't be the same if the spawn point wouldn't help me, the spawn entry wouldn't help me. I need the instance of this. If I have that NPC object, I have the game object, which is the same thing as that prefab up there. So I can do anything to that model that I want to. I have the spawn point. So it's, you know, I'm well set here if I can just have that NPC object. So let's see what we do. First of all, I want to know how many do I need to spawn. The spawn is going to be starting at the limit would be a reasonable thing to do. I said my limit was going to be like 3. I probably want to store 3, but I want to count. Now, it's unlikely that respawn is going to be called with anything currently spawned. I don't intend for it to be fill in the rest of the group, but I'm still going to make it write it that way. And this is the group ID. Yeah, okay. A little debug message for us, and then just for loop. I equals 0, I is less than to spawn, I plus plus. I guess once a C programmer, always a C programmer. What was I going to do here? I need somebody to spawn something, so I'm going to create a function down below that will spawn one mob. I'm going to call it spawn random. So that will take care of the respawn, assuming I have my spawn random. That's where all the really interesting stuff is going to happen. It's down here. Okay, my private void spawn. Okay, what are we going to do here? We have the total probability calculated earlier as we were adding spawn entries into the group. We kept increment total prop. So it's probably around 100 right now. I want to generate a random number. Random.range 0 to total prop. Okay. So give me a number from 0 to 100. I'm going to want to keep track of the cumulative probability. To know when I'm done with this. And that's needed to know which mob to create. One of the things, before I get down to that point, one of the first things I'm going to need to do is I'm going to need to get a random spawn point. So I'm going to, let me get a spawn point up here. And I could have done it in the initialization, but I'm going to do it here for reasons that will be clear in a bit. Okay, assuming I have a function random spawn point that returns me a point. Okay, private spawn point random spawn point. This shouldn't be too hard. How many spawn points are there? Well, my spawn points are in a list up here, and I can count the list. So I want to get another random number here. Dex equals random.range 0 to spawn points dot count. And I'll just return spawn points index. I'm guaranteed that this is going to be a valid reference there because, well, I guess if I don't have anything in there, spawn points will be 0, and I'll get something in 0. But assuming that there is at least one spawn point in there, this will work. I'm not going to troubleshoot that just yet, but I guess I was going to make it completely bulletproof. I'd probably handle that case and then return null. All right, this is going to give me a random spawn point. I have my point. What if the point's in use? What if the point's being used right now? I'm going to need to have this inside of a loop. And I'm going to want to keep running that loop as long as I keep rolling a random point that's in use. Now, I'm guaranteed not to keep doing this forever because I'm only using 3 of the 5 spawn points. I have more spawn points than my maximum limit here. So, but I might hit there's I guess a 60% chance I'm going to hit a spawn point that's in use, and of course, I'll have to re-roll it. So let's do this. The way to create a loop that I need to check the loop at the bottom. I can't tell at the top of the loop whether I'm going to need to keep going or not. Okay, they say, well, you make it a while loop. Well, close. I don't know that. Again, I don't know at the top of the loop when it's going to be. I'm going to use something called a do while loop. In Pascal, it's called repeat until. Okay, there it goes. Do point random spawn point while point in use. So it's guaranteed to do it one time at least, and it'll keep repeating as long as that point is in use. Eventually, it's going to fall out. It's going to give me a spawn point. Okay. Now I want to go and check, find the appropriate spawn entry. This part was find an unused spawn point. Well, I'm going to have to iterate down the list of spawn entries to find the one that we're going to use. As I described earlier before, we have 100% probability across the whole list of spawn points. If 80% of it used up for the small orc, 15 is for the next orc, and 5 for the last one. That's 80. Then it's 80 to 95, and 95 to 100. So what we're going to do is roll a number in 0 to 100 and see what range that's in. Okay, so this will mean I'll have to actually look at, worst case, each of these things. Each NPC manager dot, I want all the spawn entries, not spawn points. Why not have, yeah, okay, good. Oh no, went too far. Spawn entries, there we go. And this loop will now walk the list of spawn entries. And first thing I'm going to do here is to say the cumulative probability is the chance. Okay, so it starts out at 0. And then my first spawn entry is going to be, say, 80%. I don't know what order it's going to come in. I mean, I do know, but I shouldn't know to make this work. It should work for any different order. Okay, but my first entry chance is going to set it to 80, and then I'll see if the roll is below that. The roll has already been done, hasn't it? Or has it? Let's see. Yes, it has. The roll has already been made up here at the top. So we just need to check it. If roll is less than cumulative probability, then we're done. Okay. Plus entry dot NPC type ID plus point dot name. Okay, spawn entry small orc at, it's the name of the spawn point. That would give me some confidence it's working okay. Now, I want to spawn things, but I can't because I'm not a mono developed. I'm on a mono behavior. And I said the zone manager is the one that handles all that. So I want to delegate that behavior back up to the zone manager. So let's go do that. Now, a couple of things I want to tell it though is I want to tell it which NPC type to use and where to put it. So the way I'm going to communicate that, I'll write the function over here, is I want to pass in the transform and the type ID. I want to make it public so I can get to it. I'm going to return back the game object. That's how we can store that into the NPC object I'm going to create. Okay, so this will be the object returned via instantiation. Call this spawn, and it's going to take NPC manager.npc type ID. So that'll be the small orc, mid orc, big orc. And it's going to take a transform. And that came out of the spawn point game object that I placed around. Each one of those was carefully positioned, and you have the rotation and the location set where I wanted the orc to be. Alright, so let's see, how do we spawn this? Well, first of all, I need to create a game object equals, I need to cast this. I'm going to call it instantiate. Let me just do that again. Correct. Clones the object original and returns the clone. Clone this. I want to use the resource loader. Okay, so resources. The resources class allows you to find and access objects including assets. Well, the preset is an asset. Load. Well, no description there, but I think we can know what that's going to do. It's going to load it. And I just need to have the prefab name. Oh boy. Well, let's go get that. Who has that? The NPC manager should have that. And we'll have to add another accessor. So we'll be right back with that. Let's see, do I have any nice little things to return? Return information. Kind of wanted to stuff them all together. I kind of feel like I should, but I don't see it. All right. And I'll make it public so it's usable. And I want to return a string. And I want to get prefab name. And it will be the NPC, give me a prefab name for that. Now, we saw how we used NPC types and we signed into it. I'm going to read out of it the same way. Now, I could do a try to see if it's there, but since this is an enumerated type, and I've been careful to fill them all in, I'm going to live dangerously and just look it up. Okay, return NPC types, bracket type ID. Okay, that gives me a one of these NPC type structures, and I want the prefab name, which is right here, prefab name. Okay. Now, return is not a function, even though people write it as a function, and I often do, but it really is an operator, so that should work just fine. Back to the zone manager. You say, where is the prefab name? Okay, string prefab name equals NPC manager dot instance dot get prefab name type ID. And I want to pass in the prefab name, and it should instantiate it. Let me take a step back and take a little look at this. Okay, I like that. When I make this call, that model will appear in the world someplace. It'll appear actually where the prefab was generated, which I think the last one I stored was over at Orc 1. The nice thing here is the prefab name can be any prefab that's out there. Now, right now, I'm only using Orc, but later on, as I add more creatures to it, I can just put the prefab name in that table, and this will instantiate the correct model. Now I want to set the location to it. And I cannot assign to transform directly. Transform attached to it, because there's only a getter. There's no setter. So it's read only. Okay, so we're not going to be, I can't just take the transform out of the that's passed in, stuff it in there as much as I would like to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have to break it up into position, and there's a setter there. Equals transform dot position, And the same thing with rotation. Okay, equals transform.rotation. Now, if I do this, bad things are going to happen here. And this really kind of freaked me out when I first did this, because what happened was that when the mobs entered the world, a bunch of them, I can't say how many, 3 or 4 of the orcs just weren't there. They were off someplace else. They were in the wrong spot. And it's like, what? Is there a problem with the coordinate system? And I double-checked the transforms, and they were looking good. And it's like, I checked the object in game, and it says, this is my transform, and it's the wrong transform. I printed out the transform, and I set it right here, which I'm not going to do right now. And it said, I'm storing the right transform in, and it changed. And what happened was, I neglected to think about this. The nav mesh agent is what moves that thing around. And when I need to double check that my prefab is set to like stand, the nav mesh agent is going to move that thing around. And if I start making changes to it, it may go a little nuts and just warp my guy off someplace. So what I want to do is I want to kind of turn that thing off. This is the easiest thing I found. This is to say set active false. All right, we're turning that U off. We're going to update U, and then we're going to go dot set active true, and then return the game object. Okay, that should be just fine. That will set it up in the right spot. Now, am I missing anything? This is the spawn that's called out of spawn group, wasn't it? I think that's where we were heading. And an hour and a half into this, your heads are probably hurting pretty bad, but just hang in there. This is some good magic, but it's pretty cool. All right, now we're ready to go ahead and spawn the thing. I need to go back to the zone manager and do that. First of all, I want to store the game object zone dot and say, what can I do here? Well, I don't have, oh, zone manager, not zone manager. Zone manager. Okay, let's go back and find where my zone is now. Oh, the reason I don't have my zone right now is because that's not something I know. Now, who does know it? Well, the NPC manager knows it. So we're going to go back to the NPC manager and the NPC manager. Remember, the zone manager was saved right here in start zone. And I have my little lookup routine for right here. Let's add another one. Public zone manager. Can you reference zone manager? Get zone. I think that's probably a good name. Return zone. Oh, what are you talking about? Oh yeah, zone manager. That's correct. Scared me for a second. It's like, you're not doing that thing again, are you? But this is a lowercase c. Right, so there is now a get zone. If I go back over to the group, was it zone manager dot, and I say, oh, I need to get the zone first loaded to a variable. Okay. And I'm going to do that up here where I'm initializing everything. Reference to the zone manager, zone equals and NPC manager instance get zone. Okay, so that's my zone, and that's why I can come down here and say dot zone. Right. Zone dot. That's what I wanted to do. Spawn. Okay, we're going to call spawn. Now, what spawn takes? It took two things. We go back to the zone manager. It took a NPC type ID and a transform. Do I have those? Yes. Yes, I do. I'm pretty sure I do. The entry that we looked up has the NPC type ID in it. And the point that we got has a transform. So there's my spawn point, my entry, that the spawn group was the one who associated those two together. So we pulled that out, and now I need to make sure up here wasn't I using this this array to say currently spawn.count, and currently spawned was a list of NPCs. Well, we need to get that NPC list. That means we're going to need to create an NPC here. I'll do that. Currently spawn.add and new NPC. NPC takes three things here. It takes a type ID. Well, we have that. NPC type ID. It takes a game object, which we just got, and it takes a spawn point, which is point. Good. And now I want to mark the point as being in use. And return. Okay. Because I don't want to keep going, or else I'll keep spawning more mobs there. I want to stop the minute the probability is crossed into the correct NPC type. So we may need to work that out on the board or something in class. But I hope you can see that. So spawning random. Let's see what we need to do. Up here we have respawn, which I believe is capable of spawning mobs. Who calls this? Well, the NPC manager should be the one that calls this when it is asked to respawn. The NPC manager's respawn can be respawn the entire zone. Later, we'll respawn just one spawn group. Okay, and I'll put it down here and say public void respawn. Really should respawn all. And now what I want to do is I want to walk down each of the spawn groups. For each key in spawn groups dot values. Remember, it's a dictionary. It takes a type, a key value pair. So I'm going to iterate over just the values, and that would be the spawn groups. And now I want to say something like g.respawn. Okay. That should spawn that. Now, who's going to call this? This is the reason why we needed to have load spawn points called out of the zone, because respawn, the initial spawn of the zone, occurs right after the spawn points are loaded. So there was no way we could go back to the spawn, to the zone manager and have it do the spawning. Or have it load things. It would have to have called the respawn too. So I think we might be done with this. Let's, at least this phase of it. Let's see what we get. Okay, I do not see anything. Turn this off and check the console. Oh, no reference. That would explain it. So we loaded everything up. Object reference not set to an instance in spawn group line 41. All right. Spawn group 41 right here. Currently spawned. I never created that. And we did. So here's where currently spawn gets created. Now I have to declare it. This new, and what was currently spawned? It's a list. You know it better than I do. Thank you, MonoDevelop. I think that would be enough. And I still don't see anything. So what's going on? Another one. Key not present in dictionary. That's not good. And that doesn't tell me a whole lot about what's going on here. So I'm going to need to put some work into this to find out where it is. it looks like the key is an enum. Well, we can take a look at our log up here. We can see the last thing that happened was spawn entry npc orc at orc1 sp1. And then something bad happened. So let's go look at the code and find out what's going on. First of all, where was that message come from? Okay, was that part of the respawn down here? Yeah, okay. That was this log message right here. And then something was a dictionary lookup that did not work too well. Okay. Well, someone spawn was called, and currently spawn add. That shouldn't be a problem. Just go back to the zone manager and see, is it actually accessing a dictionary? No, I don't think so. Unless the prefab name was part of it. And that would have gone to the here, NPC type ID, the NPC type ID, prefab. This is my famous last word. This is guaranteed to work. Log. Look up prefab name for type ID. And oh, oops, can't do that after return, can I? Did I miss a prefab name up there? It doesn't look like it. I'm splitting it up in 2 lines because if this is the line the lookup is causing me to die, I don't want it to. I want to get the first one out. Types. So type ID. Prefab name. Okay. So we can expect a few things to not work here for a minute or two while we work on this. Okay, so I'm going to pause the video while I go off and debug this, and I'll tell you what the problem was. But I do see that we started to look up. We did not see the prefab name get printed out. So I think we've found the line. Okay, I think I see what might be going on here. This is a good one. I have no idea what I was thinking of when I copied this over, but I accidentally copied that line over again. So what happens, I loaded NPC types into one dictionary and I created a new dictionary. That would have taken a lot longer to find. Orcs! We have orcs. Now, okay, there are no orcs in the scene here. They were all instantiated. If we run this again, okay, they're changed a little bit. There's the last one. I'm hoping we'll see something a little bit different, but this is a rather slow process for testing this to make sure it works. And it occurs to me that I probably am missing a piece of code here, because if I look through here, you know, we had elemental orc there. It didn't show up, so they're not being renamed. Okay, that's fine. What we're having is we're loading the prefab, but we're leaving it at its prefab. So there's a couple of things that need to be done. So I'm going to stop this video right here, and we'll start another one where we will fix up the customization of the orcs and also hook up the command interpreter.